My name is Beryl Thorne, and I've lived long enough to know that the worst betrayal comes from those you love most. I'm 66, and I've seen a lot in my life. But I never thought I'd be writing a story about my only son trying to kill me. I've lived in Lynchburg for almost 40 years. It's a quiet town where everyone knows each other, but they try to stay out of each other's business, at least in word of mouth. In reality, local gossip spreads faster than wildfire in a drought. I inherited my little house on Maple Street from my husband Percy. He died 5 years ago of a heart attack. Suddenly, like a lightning strike. We had breakfast together in the morning, and by evening I was a widow. Percy worked as an insurance agent, not a great salary, but we never went hungry. I worked part-time as a call center operator for an appliance company. When Percy was gone, I had to tighten my belt. My husband's pension was a pittance, they'd messed up the paperwork, and I only got a fraction of what I was entitled to. There was no use complaining, as one of the lawyers I went to said, "Mrs. Thorne, it's easier for you to earn that money yourself than to try to prove something to the insurance company." And I did. After Percy died, I took a full-time job at a call center. You'd be surprised, but at 61, I was welcomed with open arms. "You have life experience, Beryl. You know how to talk to people," the manager said. Actually, I think they just wanted someone who was willing to work for minimum wage and not complain. Every day, I took calls from disgruntled customers whose toasters stopped working a week after purchase, or whose mixers exploded the first time they were used. I listened to their cries, apologized on behalf of the company, and filled out endless return forms. It was monotonous, exhausting work, but it brought in a steady income. After Percy died, I also discovered that he had left us debts. Not critical, but enough to cause trouble. We had to pay it off. It took almost 2 years. But when I finally paid off all my creditors, I swore to myself that I would never live in debt again. No way. I started saving, little by little, but regularly. I denied myself everything but the bare necessities. No new dresses, no going out to eat, no traveling. Just work, home, and weekly meetings with friends over a cup of tea, where we discussed soap operas and complained about rheumatism. In 5 years, I managed to save $155,000. It was my pride, my safety cushion, my future. I planned to use that money to secure a peaceful old age without having to work until my last day. Maybe even move into a better nursing home when the time came. I have one son, Orville. He's 42 and well, let's just say he's always been a problem child. He didn't do well in school, got into college only through Percy and me, and dropped out after 2 years. "I don't see the point of wasting my time with this nonsense," he told us. Percy was furious, and I was just disappointed. Orville had a few odd jobs: cab driver, construction worker, shopkeeper, never lasted longer than a year. "I'm creative," he explained when Percy and I expressed concern about his career prospects. He now works as a sales representative for a company that sells cleaning products. As I understand it, his job is to go door to door selling people products they don't need. He calls it entrepreneurship. 10 years ago, Orville married Lucinda Price. She was a waitress in the cafe where Orville worked part-time as a bartender. Tall, with a lock of red hair and a big smile. I never liked her. There was something fake about the way she talked, like she was always playing a part. But Orville was crazy about her, and I kept my opinions to myself. After all, it's his life. They have 2 kids. Ethan is 8 and Rebecca is 6. Cute kids, but I don't see them much. Orville and Lucinda aren't particularly keen on maintaining family ties. They come to visit me at Christmas, sometimes Thanksgiving, and occasionally when they need money. And they need money all the time. Orville and Lucinda live beyond their means. They have a big house on credit, 2 leased cars, designer clothes, and regular vacations to resorts. All of which they can't afford, but they buy anyway. And when it comes time to pay the bills, they turn to me. At first I helped. $500 here, $1,000 there. "We'll pay it back, Mom, I promise," Orville would say, looking me straight in the eye. I believed, but they never did. And each time the amounts got bigger and the stories more dramatic. Their roof leaked, their car broke down, Ethan needed special treatment. 2 years ago, I said no. Orville came in asking to borrow $5,000 to fix up the house. I said no. He was shocked. "But Mom, it's for your grandchildren." he said indignantly. Orville, I replied, I've loaned you over 20,000 in the last 5 years and I haven't seen a dime back. I won't give you any more. He left, slamming the door. For 3 months, we didn't speak to each other. Then he called as if nothing had happened and invited me to Rebecca's birthday party. I went, of course. She is my granddaughter, after all. We pretended nothing had happened and continued our infrequent, perfunctory meetings. Then, a week ago, Orville found out about my savings. It was an accident. I was in the hospital with pneumonia, and I needed to pay for some of the treatment not covered by insurance. I asked Orville to stop by my house and bring my checkbook. Apparently, he couldn't resist looking at the other papers lying around. Yesterday, he and Lucinda came to my house. I was just preparing dinner, chicken and vegetable stew, my favorite dish. I didn't expect the doorbell to ring. Mom, can I come in? Orville stood on the threshold with a strained smile. Behind him loomed Lucinda, just as unnaturally cheerful. Of course, come in. I let them in, wondering what could have caused such a sudden visit. They made themselves comfortable in the living room, declining the tea offered. Orville rubbed his hands together nervously, and Lucinda kept her gaze on me. Mother, we have a serious conversation to have with you, Orville began as I sat down across from them. I'm listening. I felt my back muscles tense up. My intuition told me to expect nothing good from this visit. You know that Lucinda and I have long wanted a house of our own. Not a rented one, but a real one, our own. I nodded. They'd been living in a rented house for 5 years now, constantly complaining about the high fees and arbitrary landlord. We found the perfect one, 3 stories with a garden in a good neighborhood. The kids will go to a decent school. Everyone will have their own room. There's even a guest bedroom. You'll be able to come and stay with us. That's wonderful, Orville. I was beginning to see where he was going with this, but decided to let him speak fully. The problem is that we need a large sum of money for the down payment. The bank is willing to give us a mortgage, but it requires 30% of the value outright. And how much is that? 150,000, he blurted out. I froze. The exact amount of my savings. It couldn't be a coincidence. Orville, how do you know about my money? I asked bluntly. He looked a little embarrassed, but quickly pulled himself together. I saw the statement when I took your checkbook, but that doesn't matter, Mom. What matters is that you can help your grandchildren find a real home. This is all my savings, Orville. Everything I've been saving for years, denying myself everything. But you're not going to spend it. They're just lying around in an account, Lucinda intervened, leaning forward. Think of the children, Beryl. They need a home. They have a home. A rented one. It's not the same, and you know it. Lucinda raised her voice, but Orville put his hand on her shoulder, calming her down. Mother, listen to me. We're not asking for them for nothing. We're going to give you that money back. Maybe not right away, but we will. In the meantime, you can live with us, in the new house. You won't have to pay for utilities, for food. You'll save money. I looked at my son and didn't recognize him. When did he become like that? When had he learned to manipulate with such shamelessness? Orville, I can't give you that money. It's my insurance for the future. If I get sick, if I need expensive treatment or care, but we'll take care of you. You're our family. Lucinda splayed her hands with such theatrical indignation that it made me uncomfortable. My pension barely covers my current expenses. This money is all I have. So you refuse to help your own son? Your own grandchildren? Orville looked at me with undisguised disappointment. I help you all the time, Orville. I pay for the kids' clubs, buy them clothes and toys for the holidays. But to give away all my savings, no, I can't. Orville stood up so abruptly that his chair toppled over. That's great, Mom. That's just fine. You chose money over family. I hope they'll keep you warm in your old age when you're alone. Orville, don't be so— Yes, you do. All your life you've been like that, stingy, thinking only of yourself. Even Father noticed it. Beryl and her damned economy, he used to say. It was a lie. Percy never complained of my frugality. On the contrary, he appreciated that quality, especially when times got tough and we had savings to get us through them. Your father would be disappointed if he saw the way you're acting now, I said quietly. Orville flushed with anger. Don't you dare tell me what Father would think. You didn't know him like I did. Calm down, dear. Lucinda walked over to him and put her hand on his shoulder. If your mother doesn't want to help her family, that's her choice. We'll manage on our own. She turned to me with a cold smile. It's a shame about this, Beryl. We thought you'd be happy to help. Apparently, we were wrong. They headed for the exit. At the door, Orville turned around. His face contorted with anger, and for a moment, I didn't recognize him as my son. You're going to regret this, Mom. You're going to regret it very much. The door slammed shut with such force that the glass shook. I sank down onto the couch, feeling my heart pounding. The threat in Orville's voice was unmistakable, and for the first time in my life, I was afraid of my own son. After Orville and Lucinda's visit, I spent several sleepless nights. My son's words rang in my ears. You're going to regret this, Mom. I'd known my Orville since he was a baby. He'd always had a temper, but he was resilient. Only in recent years, something had changed in him. There was a hardness, a coldness, especially when it came to money. I took out a small amount of cash, about $2,000, and hid it in an old tin cookie box that I kept behind a stack of towels in the linen closet. Not that I seriously feared that Orville might steal my money, but my gut told me it was better to be safe. On the third day after our fight, I came home from work feeling absolutely shattered. My 66 was taking its toll. The 8-hour shift at the call center was more exhausting than ever. All I wanted was a hot bath and a cup of tea and a sandwich. But when I pulled up to my house, I saw Orville's familiar car in the driveway. My heart sank. On the one hand, I was glad he'd come perhaps to apologize. On the other, our last encounter had left a heavy residue, and I wasn't sure I was ready for another conversation. I parked and walked slowly toward the house. The door opened and Orville appeared on the doorstep with a wide smile. Mom, you're finally home. He came over and gave me a hug, something he hadn't done in years. Orville? What are you doing here? I was confused by such a warm greeting. Lucinda and I decided we behaved terribly. We came to apologize and help you around the house a bit. She's making dinner right now, your favorite tuna casserole. I walked through the house and indeed saw Lucinda in the kitchen, in her apron, witching over the pans. Beryl, dear. Lucinda turned to me with a smile of such joy as if we were best friends. You must be tired. Go rest, and I'll call you to the table in half an hour. I stood in the kitchen doorway, not believing my eyes. This woman, who always looked at me with barely concealed contempt, was now bustling around my kitchen, calling me dear and cooking my favorite dish. What's going on? I asked bluntly. Orville and Lucinda exchanged quick glances. Nothing much, Mom. We just realized we were wrong. You can't fight with your family over money. You're right. It's your savings, and it's up to you to decide how to use it. It was too good to be true. Orville had never admitted wrong so easily. Thank you, was all I could say, still at a loss. Go get some rest. Orville gently nudged me in the direction of the living room. We'll finish dinner here. I obediently went into the living room and sat down in my favorite chair. Through the window, I could see Orville saying something to Lucinda, leaning toward her, and she nodding with a serious expression. Dinner passed in an unnaturally friendly atmosphere. Lucinda asked me about my work, my health, how I spent my free time. Orville told funny stories about the kids, as if we saw each other every day, not once every few months. The casserole was really good, although a little oversalted. After dinner, Orville volunteered to do the dishes, and Lucinda offered to give me a shoulder massage. You look tense, Beryl. I declined the massage but thanked her for the offer. It was all so strange that I started to get a headache. Mom, we thought you need help around the house, Orville said, wiping the last plate. Lucinda could come over a couple times a week, cook, clean. And we'd also like to take you to our house on the weekends, Lucinda added. The kids miss their grandmother so much. That's very nice of you, I replied cautiously. But I'm doing fine on my own, and you have your own worries. No, we insist, Orville was adamant. They left around 9 p.m., promising to stop by the day after tomorrow and bring the kids. I closed the door behind them and leaned my back against it, trying to comprehend what had just happened. Something was wrong. Too abrupt a change in their demeanor. Too much feigned concern. Orville had never been a good actor. I could always tell when he was lying, and today he certainly wasn't sincere. The next day, Lucinda called me at work. How she got the internal phone number, I had no idea. Beryl, I'm on my way to the supermarket. Do you need anything? Her voice sounded cloyingly sweet. No thanks, I'm all set, I replied, feeling the curious looks of my coworkers on me. Are you sure? How about some milk or bread? I'll still be near your house. Lucinda, really, you shouldn't. I'll buy everything myself on the way home. All right, whatever you say. I'll see you tomorrow then. She hung up and I was left sitting there, staring at the phone as if it could explain to me what was going on. That evening when I got home, there was a basket of fruit on the porch and a note. Some vitamins for your favorite mother-in-law, Orville and Lucinda. It was too much. In all the years we'd known each other, Lucinda had never once called me favorite mother-in-law. She usually avoided addressing me at all, as if even saying my name was unpleasant to her. I took the basket into the house, but I didn't eat the fruit. Instead, I called my old friend Doris. They're definitely up to something, Doris said after listening to my story. Maybe they want to get you to change your will? I don't know. Orville's the only heir as it is. Everything I have will go to him. Then maybe they want you to sign the house over to them now? On the pretense that they'll take care of you? It sounded plausible. The house, though small, was in a good neighborhood and was worth a decent amount. If one sold it, one could get about $200,000. Maybe, but it's all kind of weird, Doris. Be careful, Beryl, and lock up all your papers. I took Doris's advice and put all the important papers away in a small safe that Percy and I had bought years ago to store family valuables. The next few days turned into a surreal spectacle. Orville and Lucinda showed up at my house almost every day. Orville fixed the leaky faucet in the bathroom, trimmed the bushes in front of the house, even cleaned the windows, all the things I never got around to doing. Lucinda cooked, cleaned, even washed my curtains, which she said were just screaming for laundry. She brought new towels for the bathroom, a pot of violets for the kitchen windowsill, and even suggested repainting the living room walls. A fresh color will cheer you up, Beryl. All this fuss and fake care gave me a migraine. I felt trapped, not knowing what they were trying to accomplish, but knowing that nothing good could come of it. On Thursday, a week after our fight, Lucinda arrived alone, without Orville. She brought blueberry pie and a new tea set. I noticed your cups are all chipped, Beryl. We sat in the kitchen drinking tea, and Lucinda chattered on and on about the neighbors, about Rebecca's new teacher, about how the price of groceries had gone up. I nodded and pretended to listen while I watched her. Something in her demeanor betrayed nervousness. She was fixing her hair too often, her laughter sounded too loud, and her eyes darted around the kitchen as if searching for something. Her phone rang, and Lucinda came out into the living room, apologizing. I heard her lower her voice, and my curiosity took over. I quietly walked to the door and listened. No, she doesn't suspect anything, Lucinda said. Yes, I checked the closets. No, didn't find any. Must be in the bank. Orville, are you sure this is gonna work? What if she… No, of course I understand, it's just… I backed away from the door as I heard the conversation end. Lucinda returned to the kitchen with an apologetic smile. Orville called, asked if I needed to get anything on the way. He's going to stop by in an hour. I nodded, pretending I hadn't heard. But I felt a chill inside. They were looking for my money. Probably thought I kept cash at home. Lucinda, I need to lie down. I have a headache, I said, deciding to cut this visit short. Of course, of course. I'll clear the table and go. Get some rest, Beryl. She bustled about, gathering the dishes, and I retired to the bedroom and closed the door. Through the window, I saw Lucinda leave the house, get into the car, and drive away. Orville never showed up. I couldn't sleep all night. Lucinda's words wouldn't leave my mind. Are you sure this is going to work? What was she talking about? What were they up to? The next morning, I called the bank and made sure my account was okay. Then I drove to work, but I couldn't concentrate. Answering customers inappropriately, mixing up orders. Finally, the manager sent me home, saying I looked sick. At home, the first thing I did was check the stash of cash. The money was there. Then I checked the safe. No sign of forced entry. What were they looking for? I sat down in my chair and tried to calm down. Maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe they really just wanted to make up, and I'm just getting myself worked up. A phone call interrupted my musings. Mom, are you home? Orville's voice sounded strained. Yeah, I'm not feeling well. I asked off work. Great. I mean, not great that you're not feeling well, but good that you're home. Lucinda and I want to take you out to lunch on Sunday. It's nothing fancy, just a family dinner. Lucinda's mom will be there too. Alda, I marveled. Lucinda's mother rarely showed up for family events. She was a reserved woman who preferred solitude. Yes, she's in town passing through. She's staying with us for a couple days. I don't know, Orville. I really don't feel very well. Mother, please. It's important for us, for the children. It's so rare for them to see both grandmothers at the same time. He sounded almost pleading, and I gave in. Okay, I'll come over. What time? 1 o'clock. And Mom, thank you. He hung up, and I stayed sitting there staring at the phone. Something in his voice, in that insistence. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being trapped. I called Doris again. Don't go, she said firmly, after hearing my story. Or at least don't eat anything they offer. Doris, do you think they might poison me? Even saying it out loud seemed absurd. I don't know what they might, Beryl, but they're clearly up to something, and it has to do with your money. Be careful. I promised her to be wary, but I decided to go to this dinner after all. I had to figure out what was going on. On Saturday, Orville stopped by to drop off the groceries I'd supposedly asked Lucinda to buy, though I hadn't actually asked for any of that. He was unusually friendly, asking how I was feeling, even offering to go to the doctor with me. When he left, I noticed that he had left his cell phone on the coffee table. I picked it up, intending to catch up with Orville, but my phone vibrated with a message from Lucinda. I know it's wrong to read other people's messages. My mom had always taught me to respect other people's privacy. But the anxiety that had settled in me after overhearing the conversation overpowered my education. I unlocked my phone. The password was Orville's birthday, how trivial, and read the message. All set for tomorrow? Did she agree to come? I opened the correspondence history and scrolled back through. Most of the messages were mundane. About shopping, about the kids, about household trivia. But then I came across correspondence from a week ago, right after our fight. She won't give us money. Never, Orville wrote. There's another way to get it, Lucinda replied, which is, if she dies, everything goes to you. You're the sole heir. Lucinda, are you crazy? That's my mother. And this is our future, the house we dream of. Are you really going to let her ruin it? I can't. Yes, you can. It'll look like an accident. No one will suspect a thing. No, it's too dangerous. No more dangerous than living in debt for the rest of your life. Think of the children, Orville. About us. What followed was a pause of several hours, and then a message from Orville. Okay, what do you need to do? I dropped the phone like it was suddenly red hot. My son and his wife were planning to kill me for money. The front door opened. Orville came back for his phone. I barely had time to put it back on the table and stepped back to the window, pretending to look outside. There he is. Orville picked up the phone. I almost freaked out when I realized I'd lost it. Yeah, I was just about to call you to tell you you forgot it. My voice sounded unnatural, but Orville didn't seem to notice. Thanks, Mom. See you tomorrow then? See you tomorrow. I nodded, avoiding looking him in the eye. He left, and I sank into my chair, feeling my hands shaking. My own son wanted to kill me. The thought didn't fit in my head, seemed like a nightmare. I had to do something. Go to the police? But what would I say? My son and daughter-in-law are planning to kill me. I read about it in their correspondence. Sounds like the ramblings of a crazy old woman. I could have just not gone to that dinner, call in sick, leave town, but that's just a reprieve. Once they've made up their minds, they won't stop. No, I had to go. I had to see what they were up to and gather evidence. It was the only way I could protect myself. I called Doris and told her everything. She offered to come with me, but I refused. I didn't want to put her in danger too. We agreed that I would text her every hour. If she didn't hear from me, she'd call the police. I spent the rest of the day thinking about the plan. I decided that I would not eat or drink anything offered to me at Orville's house. I would take a bottle of water with me and tell him that my doctor had prescribed me a special diet because of stomach problems. I also recorded a video message on my old digital camera, detailing my suspicions and the correspondence I had read. This video, along with the camera, I put in an envelope and took it to the bank, to my safe deposit box. If anything happened to me, Doris would know where to look. That evening I slept badly, waking up at every rustle. I felt like someone was in the house, like I was being watched. The rational part of my mind said it was paranoia, but the other part, the instinctive animal part, screamed danger. In the morning, I got up shattered, with a headache and a heaviness in my chest. I stood under the shower for a long time trying to wash away the fear and anxiety, but they seemed to be embedded in my skin. Getting dressed, I decided I needed to look normal, not to arouse suspicion. I put on my favorite blue dress, put on a little lipstick, even put on my pearl earrings, a gift from Percy for our 20th anniversary. I was ready to face danger head on, ready to defend myself and my life against my own son and his wife, who had decided that money was more important than me. At noon, I got in my car and drove to Orville's house, feeling strangely calm. The fear hadn't gone away, but now it was mixed with determination. I won't let them win. I won't let them take away the life I've worked so hard to build all these years. As I pulled up to their house, I saw not only Orville's car in the driveway, but also an unfamiliar old Ford. Apparently, Alda had already arrived. That complicated things. I didn't want to put Lucinda's mother in danger. She wasn't involved in their plan. I parked, took a deep breath, and walked to the door, feeling my heart racing. No matter what happened today, I would be ready. The door swung open before I could even ring the bell. Standing on the threshold was Orville with a wide smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mom, you came!" He hugged me, and I felt his shoulders tense. "Come on in. Everyone's already gathered." I walked into the house, trying not to show my anxiety. In the living room, I saw Lucinda fussing around the coffee table where appetizers were arranged. Her mother, Alda, was sitting in a chair by the window, looking out of place in this house skinny, with gray hair and a tight bun, wearing a simple gray dress. She had always been the opposite of her bright, boisterous daughter. "Beryl, how good to see you!" Lucinda flew up to me, kissed me on the cheek. She smelled of overly sweet perfume and fear? Or was it just me imagining it? "Hello, Lucinda. Hello, Alda." I nodded to Lucinda's mother. She nodded back but didn't smile. "Kids, Grandma Beryl's here!" Lucinda shouted, and a second later, Ethan and Rebecca came running into the room. Ethan, a dark-haired 8-year-old boy, was a carbon copy of his father. The same serious eyes, the same stubborn chin. Rebecca, a 6-year-old girl with curly red hair, had inherited Lucinda's explosive temper. "Grandma!" Rebecca threw herself around my neck, nearly knocking me to the ground. Ethan approached more discreetly, but hugged me too. "My good ones." I pulled them close, feeling a stab of pain at the thought that I might never see them again. Whatever their parents had done, it wasn't the kids' fault. "We drew you pictures!" Rebecca tugged on my arm. "Come on, let's go show them." "Not now, dear," Lucinda intervened. "Dinner first. It's all ready." The children sighed disappointedly, but obediently made their way to the table. I followed, noticing Orville and Lucinda exchanging quick glances. The dining room was decorated as if for a party, fresh flowers in vases, the best china I'd given them for their wedding, even candles and silver candlesticks. It all seemed excessive for an ordinary family dinner. "Have a seat, Mother." Orville pulled back the chair at the head of the table for me. Strange, he usually took that seat himself. I sat down, spread my napkin on my lap, and looked around. Orville sat on my right, Lucinda on my left. The children were next to Lucinda, and Alda was across from me at the other end of the table. She looked tense, as if she had a premonition of something not good. "I've made your favorite dishes, Beryl." Lucinda began to arrange the food on plates. "Roast vegetables, garlic mashed potatoes, avocado salad." "That's very nice of you, Lucinda, but I'm on a diet. Doctor's orders." I patted my stomach. "Stomach problems." "Oh." Lucinda froze with a ladle in her hand. "But you can at least try a little, right?" "I've tried so hard." "I'm afraid I haven't. Strict diet, only certain foods." I pulled a container of chopped vegetables and an apple out of my bag. I brought my lunch with me. I hope you won't be offended. Orville and Lucinda glanced over again, and this time I could definitely see the worry in their eyes. Of course, Mother, we understand, Orville smiled strangely. Health comes first. Lunch began in a strange, tense atmosphere. Orville and Lucinda tried to keep up a casual conversation, asking Alda about her journey. She had come from a neighboring state where she lived in a small town, talking about the children's school successes, but their voices sounded too loud, their laughter too forced, and their eyes kept returning to my plate of untouched food. I chewed my vegetables slowly, watching them and trying to figure out what they were up to. Poison me at lunch? But how would they explain the sudden death of a healthy woman right at the table? No, there had to be something else. What about your work, Beryl? Alda asked, interrupting my musings. Lucinda said you're still working at the call center? Yes, 3 days a week, I nodded. Full time at my age is already kind of hard. I don't see why you'd even want to work, Orville interjected. You have savings, a pension. I could, at your age, just take a vacation. I like my job, I retorted. It gives me purpose, socializing with people, and the extra income never hurts. Especially when you have so much money in your account, don't you, Mom? There was unconcealed bitterness in Orville's voice. Lucinda put her hand on his shoulder as if reassuring him. Orville, not now. We had an agreement. What did you agree on? I asked bluntly. Nothing, just... Lucinda faltered. Just not to bring up the subject of money at lunch, Orville finished for her. We decided to respect your decision, Mother. What money? Alda interjected, shifting her gaze from me to Orville and back again. What are you talking about? Nothing important, Mother, Lucinda replied quickly. Family matters. Alda narrowed her eyes but remained silent, returning to her plate. I noticed she was eating without appetite, as if she didn't like the food. I wondered if she sensed something strange about the food. Grandma, do you like dragons? Ethan suddenly asked, breaking the awkward silence. Dragons? I smiled, grateful for the change of subject. Of course I love them, especially the kind ones. There are no good dragons, he objected seriously. They're all evil and breathe fire. They're not, Rebecca intervened. There are good ones. Like in the cartoon about the girl and the dragon. They began to argue, and the tension at the table eased a little. I caught Alda's eye. She was looking at me with a strange expression, as if trying to understand something. Lunch continued. Lucinda was fussing with the refills, and Orville was pouring wine for everyone but me, because I'd refused, citing my medication. The kids quickly finished their portions and ran off to the living room to watch cartoons. So, how about dessert? Lucinda suggested when the plates were empty. I made chocolate cake. No thanks, I shook my head. I'm not allowed sweets on my diet. You won't even taste the cake? Irritation sounded in Orville's voice. Mom, this is getting ridiculous. What kind of diet at your age? At my age, you have to watch your health, I smiled, trying not to show how hurt I was by his words. But you help yourselves, don't mind me. Lucinda brought out the cake, cut it into pieces, and placed it on plates. I noticed that Alda had also declined dessert, citing diabetes. After dessert, Orville suggested we move to the living room. We'll have coffee and look at pictures from our last vacation. We moved into the living room. The kids were sitting on the floor in front of the TV, watching a dinosaur cartoon with fascination. Alda sank into a chair, and I sat on the couch. Orville settled down next to me, too close, as if trying to keep me from leaving. I'll make coffee. Lucinda headed for the kitchen. I'll help. Alda got up and followed her, to Lucinda's obvious displeasure. Left alone with Orville, not counting the kids, completely absorbed in the cartoon, I decided to seize the moment. Orville, what's going on? I asked quietly. You and Lucinda are acting weird. What do you mean, Mom? He feigned surprise, but his eyes betrayed his concern. A week ago you were threatening me, and now all of a sudden you're so concerned family dinners. What are you up to? We just wanted to make up, he shrugged. Is that a bad thing? Don't lie to me, Orville. I'm your mother. I know when you're lying. He looked away, and I saw the muscle in his cheek twitch, a sure sign that he was nervous. Mom, you're exaggerating. We just wanted to have a nice family time. There were muffled voices coming from the kitchen. It sounded like Lucinda and Alda were arguing. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was tense. A few minutes later, they returned. Lucinda was carrying a tray of coffee cups, her face tense. Alda followed, her expression unreadable. Coffee's ready, Lucinda announced with feigned cheerfulness. Special recipe with cinnamon and vanilla. She began handing out cups. This one is for you, Beryl. I made it specially with non-fat milk. I know you're watching your figure. I took the cup, trying not to give away my anxiety. The coffee smelled strange, too sweet, with some unnatural flavor that overpowered the smell of coffee. Thank you, Lucinda. That's very nice of you. I set the cup on the table without taking a sip. Alda got her cup last. She was in no hurry to drink either, instead scrutinizing the contents. Well, here's to family. Orville raised his cup. Here's to us always being together and supporting each other. Everyone raised their cups, and I did too, but only pretended to drink. The coffee didn't even touch my lips. It's good, isn't it? Lucinda looked at me expectantly. I added a special ingredient. What kind? I asked, pretending to be interested. A secret? She smiled, but her eyes remained cold. A family recipe. You never told me about family recipes, Alda remarked, bringing her cup up to her nose and sniffing. This is a new one, Lucinda replied quickly. I came up with it recently. I noticed Orville tense up. He kept his eyes on my cup, as if waiting for me to take a sip. Beryl, you don't drink coffee, Lucinda remarked. Don't like it? I'm waiting for it to get cold, I replied. I don't like it hot. I think it's cooled down enough for me, Lucinda scooted closer. Try it, I tried. I brought the cup to my lips, but again only pretended to drink. It's delicious, I lied. Unusual. Lucinda relaxed, satisfied. Orville visibly calmed down too, leaning back on the back of the couch. At that moment, the children laughed loudly, reacting to something in the cartoon. Everyone turned toward them, and I took advantage of this second distraction to swap my cup with Alda's. No one noticed this maneuver, not Orville or Lucinda, and Alda herself was too busy watching her grandchildren. That cartoon they can watch endlessly, Lucinda said, returning to our conversation. It's probably on for the 100th time by now. Kids like repetition, I replied, picking up Alda's now cup and pretending to take another sip. It makes them feel safe. Orville started showing pictures from their recent trip to the lake. I pretended to be interested, commenting on the pictures, asking questions, but all the time I could feel Lucinda's eyes on me, as if waiting for her special ingredient to kick in. Alda picked up my former cup and brought it to her lips. Really unusual flavor, she said, though I noticed she only pretended to drink. What did you put in it, Lucinda? I said secret, Lucinda smiled awkwardly. An old family recipe. I'm surprised I don't know about it. Alda set the cup on the table. After all, I am your mother. The tension in the room became almost palpable. I noticed Orville tapping his fingers nervously on his knee, another gesture that betrayed his anxiety. About 20 minutes passed, filled with strained conversations and unnatural laughter. I could feel the tension rising. Orville and Lucinda were becoming increasingly nervous, seeing that nothing was happening to me. More coffee, Beryl? Lucinda offered, clearly trying to find a new way to slip me poison. No thanks, I've had one, I don't want any more. I smiled at her, noticing the corner of her lips twitch. I knew I had to get out of here as soon as possible. I have to go. I stood up. Thank you for a wonderful lunch. Already? Orville stood up as well. But it's still early. I have things to do. I started packing my bag. Thanks for the invitation. Lucinda looked disappointed, but tried to hide it under a mask of hospitality. It's a shame you're leaving so early, but we understand, of course. I said goodbye to the kids, shaking Alda's hand. She looked concerned, but said nothing. Orville walked me to the door, all the way urging me to stay a little longer, to look at more pictures, to play with the children. His insistence only reinforced my suspicions. Goodbye, Orville. I hugged him goodbye, feeling him tense. Goodbye, Mom. He hugged me back, but somehow mechanically, without warmth. As I left the house, I cast one last glance at Alda, who stood in the doorway of the living room. There was a strange expression on her face, either of concern or bewilderment. I hoped she would be okay. I got into my car and drove away, feeling the tension slowly let go. I had avoided their trap today, but what would happen next? They wouldn't stop, that much was clear. I needed a plan. Back home, I locked the door with all the locks and sank into my chair, shivering with my whole body. I was sure now my own son and his wife were trying to poison me. The strange smell of coffee, their nervousness, Lucinda's insistence, everything pointed to it. Fortunately, I'd escaped the trap, but what now? Call the police? But what proof do I have? Suspicious smelling coffee isn't enough to charge me with attempted murder. I made myself some tea, real, safe tea, and tried to gather my thoughts. My hand was still shaking as I brought the cup to my lips. The same thought kept running through my mind. My son wanted to kill me. A phone call interrupted my thoughts. I flinched, looked at the screen. It was Doris. Beryl, are you okay? Her voice sounded concerned. Yes, I'm at home. Everything is fine. You don't sound like someone who's fine. What happened at that lunch? I briefly told her about Orville and Lucinda's strange behavior, about the suspicious coffee, about how I'd switched cups. My goodness, Beryl! Do you think they really meant to poison you? I'm pretty sure, Doris. You should have seen their faces when I refused to eat, and then that coffee. You should go to the police. With what evidence? I only have suspicions. We talked for another 20 minutes. Doris tried to convince me to go to the authorities, but I resisted. Without hard evidence, it would look like the ramblings of a paranoid old woman. We said goodbye, and I was alone with my thoughts again. The clock read almost 6 o'clock in the evening. It had been about 2 hours since I'd left Orville's house. I wondered what they were doing now, discussing their failed plan, thinking up a new way to get rid of me. The phone rang again. This time the number was unfamiliar. Hello? I answered warily. Mrs. Thorne? The man's voice sounded official. This is Officer Bradley of the Lynchburg Police Department. Have you been to the home of your son, Orville Thorne, today? My heart sank. Yes, I was there for lunch. What happened? Your daughter-in-law's mother, Alda Morton, was taken to the hospital with symptoms of severe poisoning. Doctors found a potent poison in her blood. We need to ask you some questions. I felt the blood drain from my face. Alda had been poisoned. Alda, who drank from the cup, meant for me. Of course, officer, what can I do to help? We'd prefer to talk in person. Can you come down to the station? Yes, I'll be right there. I hung up, feeling as if the world around me was falling apart. Alda had poisoned herself, because of me, because I switched our cups. Oh God, what had I done? I hurriedly packed and drove to the police station. On the way, my mind raced with terrible thoughts. What if Alda dies? I'd be responsible for her death, but I didn't know for sure the coffee was poisoned. I just suspected it, but that's no excuse. I put an innocent person in danger. The Lynchburg police station was a small brick building in the center of town. I parked and walked inside, feeling my knees shake. There was a young officer sitting at the desk on duty. What can I do for you? He asked. I'm Beryl Thorne. Officer Bradley called me about Alda Morton. The duty officer nodded and picked up the phone. Officer Bradley, Mrs. Thorne is here on the Morton case. He listened to the answer and hung up. He'll be right down to get you. A few minutes later, Officer Bradley appeared, a tall, middle-aged man with tired eyes. Mrs. Thorne, come with me. He led me into a small office where a female officer was already seated. This is Detective Ramirez. Officer Bradley introduced his colleague. She's handling the case of Alda Morton's possible poisoning. Detective Ramirez nodded at me. Thank you for coming in, Mrs. Thorne. We need to ask you a few questions about the events of today. I sat down in the proffered chair, feeling like a defendant under interrogation. How is Alda? Is she all right? Mrs. Morton is in critical condition, Detective Ramirez replied. The doctors are fighting for her life. A ricin, a powerful plant-based poison, has been detected in her blood. Even a small dose can be fatal. I felt nausea coming up my throat. Ricin. A real deadly poison. They really wanted to kill me. Mrs. Thorne, tell us what happened at your son's house today, Officer Bradley asked. I took a deep breath and began to tell. About the dinner invitation, about Orville and Lucinda's strange behavior, about how I refused to eat, about the suspicious coffee, about how I switched cups with Alda when no one was watching. Why did you do that? Detective Ramirez asked when I was done. Why did you decide to switch cups? Yeah, I suspected they might have put something in my coffee. The coffee smelled strange, and Lucinda insisted she made it especially for me. And what made you think your son and daughter-in-law might have wanted to harm you? I told them about the fight over the money, about Orville's threat, about the sudden change in their behavior, about Lucinda's overheard conversation on the phone, about the correspondence I'd read on Orville's phone. The detectives glanced over. Do you have evidence of this correspondence? Officer Bradley asked. No, I didn't take screenshots or anything like that. I just read the messages and put my phone down. I see, Detective Ramirez nodded. And you didn't think to contact the police earlier when you read those messages? I didn't know if you'd believe me. It would have looked like the ramblings of a crazy old woman who suspects her son of attempted murder without any proof. And now we have proof, Officer Bradley said. Mrs. Morton's poisoning. I didn't mean for anything to happen to her. My voice shook. I was just protecting myself. I didn't know for sure that the coffee was poisoned. I only suspected. We understand, Mrs. Thorne. Detective Ramirez nodded. You will not be charged with poisoning Mrs. Morton. You acted in self-defense, not knowing for certain the presence of the poison. And Orville and Lucinda? Are they under arrest? We're questioning them right now, Officer Bradley replied. They both deny involvement in the poisoning, claiming they don't know how the poison could have gotten into the coffee. But it was Lucinda who made the coffee, I said indignantly. Yes, and that's the main evidence against her. But without a confession or other evidence, the case may be difficult. What about the children? I suddenly remembered my grandchildren. Ethan and Rebecca, what about them? They're with a neighbor who has agreed to watch them while their parents are questioned, Detective Ramirez replied. If charges are filed, we'll contact Child Protective Services. We talked for another hour or so. I told everything I knew, signed a statement. The detectives promised to keep me informed about the investigation and advised me to be careful. If Orville and Lucinda had really tried to kill me, they might try again. By the time I left the station, it was getting dark. I felt physically and emotionally drained. My son wanted to kill me. The thought still seemed unbelievable despite all the evidence. I decided to go to the hospital to find out about Alda's condition. I felt responsible for what had happened to her, even though I knew in my mind that the real culprits were Orville and Lucinda. At the hospital, I was referred to the intensive care unit. The doctor, who introduced himself as Dr. Chen, explained that Alda was in critical but stable condition. She was lucky that her symptoms came on so quickly and she was taken to the hospital right away, he said. We were able to begin treatment before the poison caused irreparable damage to her internal organs. Will she survive? Was the question that plagued me the most. The chances are there, and they're not bad, but full recovery will take time. I asked permission to see Alda, but Dr. Chen explained that she was unconscious right now and visits were limited. You can come back tomorrow if her condition improves. I thanked him and was about to leave when two police officers appeared in the ICU lobby. Along with them were Orville and Lucinda, pale and frightened. Mom! Orville spotted me and stopped. What are you doing here? I came to inquire about Alda's condition, I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. How is she? Lucinda asked, and I could hear real concern in her voice. Perhaps she was genuinely worried about her mother, even though she was ready to kill her mother-in-law. Critical but stable condition. The doctor says she has a chance. Lucinda covered her face with her hands and burst into tears. Orville put his arm around her shoulders, trying to comfort her. Why did you do it? I asked quietly, looking at them both. Was the money really worth the risk? We didn't do anything, Orville exclaimed. Mother, you must believe us. I've seen your correspondence, Orville. I know what you were planning. He turned even paler. What correspondence? What are you talking about? On your cell phone. You left it at my house on Saturday. I saw you and Lucinda discussing a plan to kill me. Orville and Lucinda looked over in horror. One of the policemen stepped forward. Is this true, Mr. Thorne? There is such correspondence? Orville opened his mouth but could not utter a word. Lucinda continued to cry, her shoulders shaking. Yeah, I don't remember such correspondence, Orville finally squeezed out. Mother, you must have misunderstood something. Don't lie, Orville. I read how Lucinda offered to get rid of me to get the inheritance, and how you agreed. The second policeman pulled out a notebook. Mrs. Thorne, are you prepared to give formal testimony about this correspondence? Yes, of course. I've already told the detectives at the station about it. No! Lucinda suddenly shouted. No, you don't! I'll confess. It was me. I poisoned the coffee. I wanted to get rid of Beryl so I could get her money. Silence reigned. Everyone looked at Lucinda, who was now sobbing in her voice, bent in half as if in physical pain. Lucinda, be quiet! Orville tried to stop her, but it was too late. I can't lie anymore, she screamed. I put poison in Beryl's coffee. I wanted her dead so we'd get her money. We're in debt. We're being threatened. I was desperate. The police officers reacted quickly. They separated Orville and Lucinda and read them their rights. Lucinda continued to cry and confess, and Orville stood with his head down as if all strength had left him. Orville helped me, Lucinda sobbed. He knew of the plan. He agreed to it. We planned it together. Lucinda, that's enough, Orville exclaimed. But it was obvious he had already given up. The policeman led them away, leaving me alone in the hall. I sank into the nearest chair, feeling tears streaming down my cheeks. My son and his wife had just confessed to trying to kill me. It was too much to realize. After a while, one of the police officers approached me. Mrs. Thorne, we need you to come down to the station for a further statement. But first, we'd like to know, who's going to take care of Mr. and Mrs. Thorne's children? I wiped away my tears. I can take them in. I'm their grandmother. Are you sure? After everything that's happened? They're my grandchildren. They are not to blame for their parents' actions. The policeman nodded. Good. We'll notify Child Protective Services of your decision. They will contact you to arrange for temporary custody. I went to the police station where I gave a further statement about the correspondence I had read, signed the papers. I was told that Orville and Lucinda were being charged with attempted murder and that they were facing long prison sentences. When I returned home late that night, I felt absolutely devastated. Everything had happened so quickly. Just this morning, I was preparing for a normal family dinner, and now my son and his wife were arrested for trying to kill me. Their mother was in the hospital with poisoning, and their children would soon be living with me. I sat back in my chair, and for the first time in this whole crazy day, I allowed myself to truly cry. I cried for my lost family, for the betrayal, for how money had turned my son into a potential murderer. I cried for my grandchildren who would now grow up without parents, and for myself, an old woman who was left all alone with money that brought so much grief. A phone call interrupted my sobs. It was Doris. Beryl? What's going on? There's a rumor going around town that Orville and Lucinda have been arrested. It's true, Doris. I wiped away my tears. They tried to poison me, but Lucinda's mother was poisoned instead of me. Oh my God, how did that happen? I told her everything, about the suspicious coffee, about how I'd changed the cups, about Lucinda's confession, about the arrest. Beryl, that's terrible. Are you all right? I don't know, Doris. I just don't know. Everything is so messed up. I lost my son, my daughter-in-law. Their mother is in the hospital in critical condition, and now I'm going to take care of the kids. I'll come, Doris said firmly. You shouldn't be alone at a time like this. Thank you, Doris. You're a true friend. We said goodbye, and I was alone with my thoughts again. I thought about what would happen next, about the lawsuit that would inevitably follow, about how all this would affect the children, how I would live with the idea that my own son wanted to kill me. The next morning, the hospital called. Dr. Chen reported that Alda's condition had improved. She had regained consciousness and was asking about her daughter. What should I tell her? He asked. About her daughter being arrested for attempted murder? Tell her that Lucinda and Orville have been detained by the police for investigation, I replied. I think full details can be given when she is stronger. Reasonable, agreed the doctor. I'll do just that. Then Child Protective Services called. They informed me that Ethan and Rebecca were temporarily in foster care, but could be placed in my care after appropriate screening. We will send a social worker to assess the living conditions and your ability to care for the children, the woman on the phone explained. Of course, I understand. I am ready to create all the necessary conditions for them. The day passed in turmoil. Calls from the police, from Child Protective Services, from the lawyer I had hired to represent me. I also visited Alda in the hospital. She was weak but conscious. She squeezed my hand when I apologized for what had happened. It wasn't your fault, Beryl, she whispered. You didn't know for sure. You were defending yourself. Her forgiveness was like a balm to my tortured soul. But I knew that for a long time, I would feel guilty for putting her in such danger. Doris arrived in the evening with dinner and a bottle of wine. We sat in the kitchen, drinking the wine and talking about what had happened. What do you think will happen to Orville and Lucinda? Doris asked. I don't know. The lawyer says they're looking at 10 to 20 years in prison. Probably less if there's a plea bargain. And the kids? I'll take them in with me. They're my grandchildren, Doris. It's not their fault what their parents did. Doris squeezed my hand. You're a strong woman, Beryl. Not everyone could do that after such a betrayal. I shrugged. What else do I have left? They're all I have left of my family. We finished our wine and Doris left, promising to stop by every day. I was alone in my quiet house, thinking about how my life had changed in one day. The money I had saved so carefully, money that was supposed to provide me with a peaceful old age, had caused my family to collapse. It had turned my son into a potential murderer, robbed my grandchildren of their parents, nearly killed an innocent woman. But I couldn't blame just the money. Greed, desperation, fear, all played a part in the tragedy that destroyed our family. I didn't know what lay ahead. A lawsuit, a new life with grandchildren, a lonely old age. But I knew one thing. I had to be strong. For Ethan and Rebecca, for myself. I survived. I survived an attempted murder by my own son. I could survive anything else. It's been 3 months since that horrible day when my son and his wife tried to poison me. 3 months that changed my entire life. The trial was quick. Lucinda fully pleaded guilty, recounting all the details of their plan. Orville initially denied involvement, but when the prosecutor presented their correspondence, extracted from Lucinda's phone, he had to give in. They were sentenced to 15 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 10 years. I sat in the courtroom during the reading of the sentence, watching my son. His face was gaunt and his eyes were filled with despair. As he was being led away, he looked at me, just for a second, but I could see a mixture of remorse and anger in his gaze. It was as if he was both sorry for what he'd done and blaming me for catching him. Alda recovered, though she was not fully restored to health. The poison had damaged her liver and kidneys, and now she would have to take medication and follow a strict diet for the rest of her life. She has moved to a nursing home in a neighboring town closer to her sister. We call her regularly. She doesn't hold a grudge against me for what happened, although she has every right to, and I became Ethan and Rebecca's guardian. My life has changed dramatically. From the quiet, measured life of an older woman, I was suddenly plunged into the chaos of raising 2 children who had lost their parents. The first weeks were especially difficult. The children didn't understand what was going on, why Mom and Dad weren't coming home, why they had to live with a grandmother they had only seen on holidays. To Ethan, my serious grandson, I explained that his parents had done a bad thing and now had to be punished. To Rebecca, an impressionable little girl, I simply told her that Mommy and Daddy had gone very far away and wouldn't be able to come home for a long time. She would cry at night, calling for her mom, and I would sit next to her, stroking her head, not knowing how to comfort a child whose mother wanted to kill her grandmother. My modest 1-bedroom apartment became too small for the 3 of us, and I decided to move into Orville and Lucinda's house. It was registered in Orville's name, but by law, all of his property went into a trust for the children, and I, as their guardian, could manage it. It was easier for the children to stay in familiar surroundings, although for me, every day in this house was a challenge. I slept in the guest room, hesitant to take over my son and daughter-in-law's bedroom where they might be planning my murder. I quit my job at the call center. Now I had no time to work. All my days were filled with caring for my grandchildren, going to school and daycare, making lunches and dinners, and checking homework. At 66, I became a mother again. Only now I had two children instead of one. Doris became my support during those difficult months. She helped with the kids, brought meals when I was too tired to cook, just sat with me in the evenings when the kids were asleep, and I felt like I was about to break under the weight of the problems piling up. "You're strong, Beryl," she would tell me. "You'll get through this. And I'm always here for you." And I tried to be strong for the children, for myself. But sometimes at night when the house was quiet, I let myself cry. I mourned the loss of my son, not the Orville who was now in prison for trying to kill me, but the little boy I had once held in my arms, to whom I had sung lullabies, whose first steps and first words had filled my heart with joy. Where did I go wrong? When did my son turn into a man capable of wanting his own mother dead? Maybe I was too strict. Or, on the contrary, not strict enough. Maybe I worked too much and didn't spend enough time with him. Or maybe I just didn't love him enough. These questions haunted me, keeping me up at night. I went over all the years of his growing up, all our fights and reconciliations, all the times I could have shaped his character. I blamed myself. I blamed Percy. I blamed the circumstances of our lives. Until one day I realized it was pointless. Orville was a grown man who had made his own choices. Whatever the reasons, whatever the circumstances that drove him to that decision, it was ultimately his choice to go along with the plan to kill his own mother for money. And no amount of self-flagellation on my part would change that fact. Realizing this brought me a strange relief. I stopped waking up at night, tormented by thoughts of what I could have done differently. Instead, I started thinking about the future, mine and my grandchildren's. And then one morning, after walking Ethan to school and Rebecca to daycare, I decided it was time for a change. I couldn't continue to live in this limbo, in a house that constantly reminded me of betrayal. I couldn't continue to exist only for the sake of the children, forgetting about myself. I deserved more. We all deserved more. I called my lawyer, Mr. Paulson, and made an appointment. He was an older man with kind eyes and a reputation for honesty, though not the most famous lawyer in town. Percy and I had gone to him years ago to draw up a will, and I had not changed lawyers since. "What can I do for you, Mrs. Thorne?" he asked as I sat down across from him in his modest office. "I want to rewrite my will," I replied firmly. He nodded without showing surprise. Probably, after everything that had happened, it was expected. "And how do you want to dispose of your estate?" "I want to set up a trust fund for my grandchildren, Ethan and Rebecca. The money should go toward their education, college, perhaps graduate school. But they shouldn't have access to the principal until they are 25 years old." Mr. Paulson wrote down my wishes. "And the rest of the estate?" "I want some of the money to go to charity. There's a senior citizens fund in our town. I'd like to support it. And also, I want some of the money to be used to create a scholarship at Lynchburg College for students from low-income families." "Very noble," Mr. Paulson nodded. "What about your son?" I took a deep breath. Here it was, the moment of truth. "I disinherit him completely." Mr. Paulson didn't show surprise at that either. "I understand. Given the circumstances, it's a reasonable decision. But you should know that he can contest the will after your death." "On what grounds?" I wondered. "Children have the right to contest a will if they feel they've been wrongfully disinherited. Of course, in this case, the court is likely to side with you, given his crime against you. But theoretically, that possibility exists." I nodded, taking note of this information. "I still want to disinherit him, and I want the reason clearly stated in the will, his attempt to kill me for money." Mr. Paulson wrote that down as well. "All right, I'll have the documents ready within a week and you can sign them." As I walked out of Mr. Paulson's office, I felt strangely relieved, as if a heavy weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The decision to disinherit Orville wasn't just a formality, it was a symbolic act marking the end of our relationship as mother and son. It was painful, but necessary. When I got home, I decided it was time to do something else I'd been putting off all these months. I pulled out the albums of family photos and started going through them, separating the pictures that only had the children in them from the ones with Orville and Lucinda present. I didn't want to completely erase them from the children's lives, after all. They were still their parents. But I didn't want their pictures to be everywhere in the house, a constant reminder of the betrayal. Looking through old photos, I came across a picture taken years ago when Orville was about 5. Percy and I took him to the beach, and someone on vacation took a picture of the three of us against the sunset. We were all smiling, happy, and carefree. Percy was holding Orville on his shoulders, and I was standing next to him, leaning on my husband, looking at them both lovingly. Looking at that picture, I felt a lump come up in my throat. Where are the people in that picture? Percy's long gone. Orville's in jail for trying to kill me, and I'm not the same young woman full of hope and love. But it was in that moment that I realized I didn't want to define myself through the lens of this tragedy for the rest of my life. I don't want to be just the woman my own son tried to kill. I want to be something more. I want to find joy in life again, like that young woman in the photograph. And that's when I made another decision. I'm going to travel. Not immediately, of course. The children need time to get used to the new life, and financial issues need to be settled. But in a year or two, when everything is settled, I'll start exploring the world. All those places I've always dreamed of, but never visited because I was too busy working, taking care of my family, saving money for my old age. I pulled out an old globe that Percy and I had bought years ago and started spinning it around, letting my finger randomly stop at different countries. Italy, I had always wanted to see Rome and Venice. France, Paris, the city of love that Percy and I had planned to visit for our 25th anniversary, but never got to because of his illness. Greece, Spain, Japan, so many places that were waiting for me. Of course, these weren't just dreams. I needed a concrete plan. The next day, I went to a travel agency and bought some guidebooks. In the evenings, after the kids went to bed, I read about different countries, imagining myself there, planning routes, estimating costs. And I also decided to find a hobby, something that would be mine alone, that would bring me joy and fulfillment. After several attempts, I settled on painting. I had never tried painting before, but I had always admired paintings. I enrolled in a beginner's course at the local art center and found that although I had no particular talent, I found the process of creating was very satisfying. It was there at the course that I met several women around my age. They were all retired and had their own stories. Some were widowed, some were divorced, some had never been married. We started meeting not only in class, but just for fun, going to coffee shops, movies, sometimes having a get-together at someone's house. I developed a particularly warm relationship with one of them, Helen. She was a widow, like me, and was also raising a grandson. His parents were killed in a car accident. We often discussed with her the difficulties of parenting at our age, sharing advice, and just supporting each other. You know, Beryl, Helen said to me one day as we sat in the park watching our grandchildren play in the playground. I used to think my life was over when Frank died, and then when I had to take Tommy, I was terrified. I thought I couldn't cope, that I was too old for all this. But now I realize that life goes on, just in a different form, and there is still room for joy and new discoveries. Her words touched me deeply because I felt the same way. Life goes on despite all the losses and betrayals, and there is still room for joy. As the months went by, I could feel myself slowly coming back to life. The children, too, were adapting to their new reality. Ethan, who had been withdrawn and aggressive at first, began to open up. He joined the school chess team and turned out to be quite a talented player. Rebecca, my little princess, stopped crying at night, calling for mommy. She loved our drawing sessions together and often asked me to draw something for her. We regularly visited Alda in the nursing home. The children enjoyed seeing their grandmother, and I could see how these visits lifted Alda's spirits. We never talked in front of the children about what had happened, but one day when they were playing in the next room, Alda took my hand and said, "You know, Beryl, I think everything happened the way it was supposed to happen. If you hadn't changed the cups, you'd be lying in your grave now, and Orville and Lucinda would have gone on with their lives as if nothing had happened." And now, though they're in jail and I'm sick, the children are safe and happy with you. And that's the main thing. I was touched by her words. Alda had lost her daughter, her health, but she was not embittered, not in despair. She accepted the situation and found positive aspects in it. That was a lesson for me. Some more time passed, and I decided to realize another dream: to sell Orville and Lucinda's house and buy a new one that would not be burdened with bad memories. Of course, it wasn't legally easy. Orville owned the house, and the proceeds from the sale had to go into the children's trust fund. But Mr. Paulson helped me with all the formalities, and in the end, we were able to sell the house and buy a new, smaller but cozy house in a good neighborhood, not far from Ethan's school and Rebecca's kindergarten. Moving to the new house was a fresh start for all of us. The kids picked out colors for their rooms, we bought new furniture together, and arranged everything to our liking. This was our home, unburdened by the past, a home in which we could create new happy memories. The day we finally moved in, I threw a small party. I invited Doris, Helen, and her grandson, a few other new friends. We barbecued in the garden, the kids played on the new lawn, the adults chatted and laughed. Looking at this scene, I suddenly realized I was happy. Despite everything that had happened, despite my son's betrayal, I had found a new life, a new family, not by blood, but by spirit. My $155,000, which had almost cost me my life, was now working for good. Some of it had already been donated to charity. Some of it set aside for my children's future. I didn't regret that money. It brought me not only grief, but freedom. Freedom from having to work until my last day. Freedom to help others. Freedom to travel and enjoy life. The day after the party, I sent a letter to Orville in prison. I thought long and hard about whether I should do it, but in the end, I decided that I had to put a stop to our relationship. In the letter, I didn't accuse him or express anger or resentment. I simply informed him that I had disinherited him, that I was raising his children and doing my best to make sure they grew up to be good people. And at the end, I wrote, "I forgive you, Orville. Not for your sake, but for my own. I don't want to carry the weight of hatred and resentment for the rest of my life. I let you go and wish you to find peace with yourself." I don't know if he'll respond, if he'll even read my letter, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that I've said everything I wanted to say, and now I can move on without looking back. Today, sitting in my new garden, watching Ethan teach Rebecca how to play chess, I think about how strangely life works. Sometimes the scariest events can lead to unexpected twists and turns, opening new doors that we would never have noticed if we were walking off the beaten path. I don't know what lies ahead. In a year, Ethan will be going to middle school. Rebecca will be in second grade. In 5 years, I may be fulfilling my dream of traveling to Europe, taking the kids with me. In 10 years, Ethan will be in college and Rebecca will be in high school. In 15 years, who knows? I may be too old to travel, but I'll have my memories, my friends, my grandchildren, maybe even great-grandchildren. But whatever happens, I know one thing: I will no longer live in the past. I will not define myself through the lens of betrayal and pain. I will live in the present, savor every day, every moment of joy and happiness. Because life is too short to waste it on resentments and regrets. And because I finally realized some family bonds are not worth keeping if they only bring pain. Sometimes you have to have the courage to let go of what causes suffering and open yourself up to new connections, new relationships, new love. And that, I think, is where true wisdom lies. Not in hoarding money, not in preserving the appearance of family well-being at all costs, but in the ability to distinguish real, valuable relationships from toxic ones, in the ability to let go of what has outlived its usefulness and to embrace with an open heart all the new things life has to offer.